Hi there. So, what's up with Throne and Liberty? I'm sure you've seen videos or Twitch clips of people absolutely clowning on that game, but I feel like that there isn't a whole lot of more constructive and nuanced discussion of the Throne and Liberty Korean CBT. And I'm not talking about cock and ball torture, although it did feel like it sometimes. I want to talk about it from the perspective of a player who participated in the Korean test and as such experienced the game firsthand and with local latency, as I'm currently based in Seoul, South Korea. Well, the first major issue that spread across the MMORPG community like wildfire is the dreaded auto hunt, or astral hunt as it's called in the game. While it is probably one of the biggest and most memeable issues, I would like to tackle it a little bit later. I think because it's more of a symptom rather than the cause, in my opinion. The biggest problem that I've experienced within the game is the combat. There are more problems that I want to talk about, but this is the first one, the big one. We knew that the combat was going to be a very old school, static, tap-target combat system that you might know from games like the Lineage series. But I think that just this expectation alone is the issue, or one of the issues, because no game releasing in 2023 should be releasing with a Lineage combat system, or as I like to call it, the RuneScape combat system. I've heard from old school Lineage players that this sort of combat is fit for purpose, and that purpose is mass PvP. I've been told to expect 200 plus players participating in guild versus guild PvP, such as sieges and open world PvP. From my experience during the beta, the combat was sluggish, unresponsive, and generally felt janky, and almost like it was at an early stage in development. Definitely didn't feel fit for purpose. I've even experienced rubber banding, as incredible as that might be in combat as static as this one. Have you ever played a mobile game emulated through BlueStacks or Nox Player? Other emulator brands are available. How every input just doesn't feel right? This is what it felt like playing TL. It's as if I was controlling the character by pulling the strings on a marionette. There were times when, during some of the more hectic moments, of which there weren't many, mind you, my camera would just refuse to be turned by me trying to drag it with LMB or RMB. And now that I mention the mouse buttons, that reminds me, there is actually no difference between using LMB or RMB to turn your character, as the game doesn't recognize the difference between the two. This goes beyond camera control as well. The entire game, whether it be interacting with the UI, interacting with objects or NPCs or anything else, using RMB is essentially pointless, as it does nothing or acts as LMB. You may think this is a minor point, but it ties onto a much bigger overall issue, which has to do with what the game feels like it was designed for. And hint, it's those little black rectangular devices that we carry in our pockets everywhere. Anyway, what was I talking about? Right, the combat. Combat is, let me put it plainly, nothing short of awful. And I say this as someone who prefers tap-target combat. I think because my main focus is PvP, and I believe that tap-target combat just offers much greater precision control, and it allows for a higher skill ceiling. Well, at least in PvP it does, in my opinion. But it has to be done right. Take, for example, Arcage. Arcage is probably some of the best and most responsive tap-target combat systems out there. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty damn close. It was fast, fluid, full of movement and mobility, and a lot of the skills, especially the melee ones, actually moved your character, as well as allowed you to move while using the instant cast abilities. For example, there were abilities that would literally jump you up into the air, and it wasn't just some kind of animation. It was literally physically moving your character up, like jumping up and then landing on the head of your enemy, for example. Right? It's that specific skill was called Overwhelm, and there was more. I am not so shamelessly plugging some of my old Arcade videos right now in the background. Please feel free to watch more at your leisure on my YouTube channel. Thank you. Back to TL though. The problem with the combat extends to depth and complexity, or lack thereof. TL doesn't have a typical class system like other MMOs do. And this is not a bad thing in and of itself, but basically, instead of your class, it has a weapon system. So your abilities depend on the weapon that you have equipped. So say you have a staff. Well, you'll be able to use the abilities that go with it and the passives. Each weapon has 7 to 8 skills that you will unlock and a bunch of passives. You will be able to equip 2 weapons at the same time and be able to switch between them at will. This actually sounds like a decent system. And on paper, it honestly is. However, the skills are basic and dull, unimaginative, and lack depth. There also aren't any real combos to speak of, at least not in the way you might be used to from other games like Guild Wars 2 or Arcade, like mentioned before. There are some interaction between skills, but they are very basic and do not offer much in terms of high skill ceiling. And this means that in total, you will have at your disposal 14 to 16 skills. This is, like I said before, you have 6 to 7 per, 7 to 8 per weapon, and you have 2 weapons that you can switch between. So that totals up to 14 to 16 skills. I don't know about you, but that's pretty poor. This might just be a personal preference though, but I do like when games just throw skills at me and make me choose between them, and then allow me to use, like 20 or 30. I think knowing how to use a large selection of abilities and be able to do some proper key binding is just an essential skill in PvP. It doesn't get better from here though. The actual combat, when you're playing manually that is just tedious and boring. There's no other word for it. In fact, the game encourages you to assign your abilities and be used automatically. And again, we're talking about manual mode, not autoplay. It teaches you this in the first couple of minutes of the tutorial, that you can simply press E, and then your character will automatically walk to the nearest enemy, run to the nearest enemy, and start using your skills. Then all you have to do is sit back and, I wasn't say enjoy, but more like wish you were playing a better game. It's like having a one-button macro in World of Warcraft. And again, I'm talking about when you're playing manually, right? So, not auto hunt. Now, of course, in PvP, you don't really want to have all of your skills on auto use, because then, that might not be the best way to use them in PvP. It's more situational. But outside of that, which, let's be honest, there's, you're going to be mostly just killing mobs in the game, right? It's a grinder game. So PvP, probably a small portion of it. An actual sort of measured by gameplay that you spent playing in the game, most of it probably going to be just mob killing, right? So for the most part, you can just have it set on auto, and then you'll be fine. By the way, did I mention that in TL, using any kind of skill, including auto attack, roots your character in place for the duration of that animation? Oh, hold on. I think it's 2001 calling. Hello? Oh no. They hit the second tower. Anyway, I digress.
So what about the other features then? Well, there isn't much to speak of. You have your classic enchantment system that gets progressively more unforgiving the higher you get. Crafting system that seems like it was tacked on in the last minute. Right, speaking of the crafting, let's talk about that. Crafting in the game is so basic and rudimentary, it shouldn't even be called crafting. There are no crafting professions, proficiencies, or specializations. You just collect the materials, most of which you will of course come from Mob Hunt, then go to the NPC, pay a massive fee, and that's it, you got your item. Wanna be a dedicated crafter for your guild or constant party like in Lineage? Tough titties. There is no player-to-player trading in this game. Although I did hear something about trading being possible, in a limited fashion that is, within a guild, so we'll have to wait and see about that. There's not much else to be said about crafting. It's there, but it's as basic as it gets. The lack of direct trading neatly segues into the next big issue, the auction house, featuring the cash shop. Oh yes, if you've played Bless Unleashed, or any mobile MMO, and really loved the premium currency auction house, then today's your lucky day, because that's how the auction house feature is being implemented here. Oh man, what more is there to say? Premium currency auction house. Really? Come on, NCSoft. Now, let's finally talk about the auto hunt. So what is the big deal? Well, first off, to many people it feels cheap and just plain weird to have a feature in a game that plays the game for you, so that you don't have to. Imagine the next From Software Souls game would have a feature that auto-plays the game for you. You'd think that's nonsense and you'd never use it, right? Because you want to play the game. Well, herein lies the issue. Usually we think of autoplay systems as redundant and stupid because, you'd want to play the game yourself instead. But what if I told you that the general gameplay loop is so poorly designed that you don't actually want to do that yourself. You would much rather prefer if that game, did it for you, or alternatively, something like a bot, right? Like this game, this grind is so boring, I'm just gonna get a bot to do it for me, right? Usually in games, you get banned for using a bot. In TL, it's a feature. The game mostly consists of dailies and kill quests that ask you to slaughter around 40 mobs per quest, at least that was my experience. And when you have like 10 of these quests to do per day, and you can just do the math, right? It's not fun. It really isn't. This wouldn't be an issue in a game like BDO, where the combat is designed to be as fun as possible for this task, where you AoE down packs of mobs like you're some genocidal maniac. But in a game like TL, where you'll mostly be killing mobs one by one, in a combat system reminiscent of Lineage at best and RuneScape at worst, it just doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Fear not, however, for we have crafted a solution perfect for your woes. Click this magic button and you need not do anything no more. The game will play itself for you, and you can go make a coffee, drinks at coffee, watch a movie, go on a holiday, and so on and so forth. It's really that bad. Well, I ask you, humble gamer, is this a game worth playing? It could be, provided these issues are addressed. Combat could be improved significantly by just allowing movement while using instant cast skills, allowing player-to-player trading, and make the gold main currency for the auction house. That alone would fix a lot of problems. However, what I'm afraid cannot be fixed so easily is the progression. See, there is an even more insidious reason for the auto hunt to exist. Considering this is NCSoft that we're dealing with, and this game being essentially a spiritual successor to the Lineage series, and also taking in consideration the previous Lineage mobile games, with which TL has a lot of things in common, the game is going to be incredibly grindy. If I was going to say pay to win, right? Well, that also, but grindy especially. That's why you get offline play, quote unquote, when you buy the season pass. Oh yes, you don't even have to be logged in for about 8 hours a day for your characters to still make progress. There were plenty of more minor issues. For example, the UI is taken straight out of NCSoft's mobile games like Lineage M, Lineage 2M, Lineage W, and so on. For example, any window, except inventory, opens in full screen and has massive buttons that feel like they were designed either for people with visual impairments or touchscreens. And I'll give you a hint. It's the second one. But UI won't make or break the game, so it's really only a minor point. The optimization seems a bit off too. Some people experienced smooth gameplay, while others with better hardware had terrible performance. So NCSoft might have to do some optimization. But I think what it really rounds it all up is the lack of content. Outside of mob grind and the occasional GVG, what are you going to be doing in TL, realistically? There just isn't much to do. Granted, it was only a 7-day test, so we couldn't get far enough to know, but the core systems of a game are apparent early on, so the PvP better be damn good, since that's the only real content that you're going to be doing. But with this combat system, I doubt it. So, was there anything good about TL? The graphics, amazing for sure. The guild system seemed pretty robust too. I like how you can declare war on any guild or ally with any guild. That will make server politics and drama far more interesting for sure. The openness of the PvP was also refreshing. When zones go to war, which is only at night or during certain events, you can just attack anyone with no penalties. That was nice. Unfortunately, outside of that, most zones seem to be set to peace, during which you can't even attack enemy guilds. But again, we don't know. Maybe higher level zones will have different rules, but this is what we've seen. So, that's it then for TL. Overall, it was a mediocre experience that I feel like could be hugely improved with some tuning of the combat. And I guess that is the real issue, isn't it? It's supposed to be a AAA flagship title from NCSoft, a giant in the MMORPG history. And this is what they come out with as their new next big thing, a glorified mobile game. It's a shame. It is a real shame. So, I'm not holding out hope. Well,
Thank you for tuning in, folks. See you later. Or not. That's also okay.